Hello everyone, let's discuss today's The Hindu editorial page. The first article is The COVID-19 Death Toll in India, Getting It Right. In this article, the writer says that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a significant global public health concern, with the international public health community emphasizing the need to measure the pandemic impact in terms of excess mortality. This can be achieved by comparing observed mortality during the pandemic with expected mortality based on pre-pandemic trends. However, India faces a challenge in estimating excess deaths directly due to COVID-19, as death registration in India is still around 70%, which varies widely across states and districts. Independent investigators compiled mortality records from local offices of the Government Civil Registration System, CRS, in 14 states and 9 cities across India from January 2018 to May 2021. Various scientific teams used these and other available mortality data from the Sample Registration System, SRS, and household surveys to develop modeled excess mortality estimates for India. However, most studies could not overcome some crucial biases in the input data for the modeling exercises, as well as the assumptions applied to fill data gaps. There has been intense debate and controversy around the plausibility of various mortality estimates for India, which have focused on the statistical methods and data assumptions employed for estimation. Most studies have been based on inadequate samples or information bias at various levels, making it likely that COVID-related excess deaths in India may have been overestimated. To address this issue, the government should convene a task force of national experts in this field to attend to this matter. This task force would be provided access to all the microdata from the CRS, SRS, and other relevant data sources as necessary. Once equipped with all the available and required information, the task force would be able to conduct a thorough analysis using standard statistical methods that utilize empirical data, providing measures of excess mortality by sex and age at national, state, and district level. The next article is The Israel-Palestine Conflict is at Bend Point. In this article, the author discusses the brutal terror act by Hamas on October 7, 2023, and the Palestinian struggle against Israel's occupation for several decades. They argue that there can be no justification for terror and that Israel should have ideally withdrawn from occupied land in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem in return for peace. The UN Security Council's resolutions 242 and 338 embodied the principle of land for peace, which emphasizes security, recognition, normalcy, and peace for the peoples of Israel and Palestine. The revised 2017 Charter of Hamas accepted a two-state solution based on the 1967 borders, which could bring peace. Israel must dismantle Hamas's infrastructure in Gaza and release Israeli hostages. However, the killing of 8,000 plus Palestinian civilians in 22 days, with children making up 40%, is not justified compared to 9,600 casualties in 20 months of the Ukraine conflict. The author also discusses the dehumanization of Palestinians in Gaza, as seen in the West, and their media equate Hamas with all 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza. This dehumanization makes it easier to accept indiscriminate bombings without outcry. The author also criticizes the West's attempt to equate the struggle for Palestinian statehood with this struggle against Hamas, discrediting the larger cause. The author also discusses the Western euphemism of humanitarian issues, which are not humanitarian issues but rather a question of humanity itself. The unfolding situation is a human tragedy involving the killing of thousands of innocent lives and mass displacement of 1.2 million Palestinians. The Arab world has been accused of hypocrisy and double standards in their race for normalization with Israel, but they have also been responsible for sidelining Palestine. Arab countries have talked about the Palestinian issue and even said that Israel has agreed to stop further annexation, while Israel did the exact opposite by expanding settlements. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that land for peace has now been substituted by peace for peace, and was of the opinion that the real issue in West Asia is now Iran and not Palestine. While Palestine statehood was a footnote in their normalization agreements with Israel, it is in danger of being reduced to a footnote to history. The Gulf countries have tried to contain popular support in their streets, but this will not give them security. especially when they are moving toward a more liberal governance in the Gulf. Israel is also complicit in this, as successive governments have strived to make the two-state solution more difficult. The irony of Israel-Palestine history is that it is only when there is a major violent conflict that the Palestinian issue receives attention. The UN Secretary General warned that such incidents do not occur in a vacuum. Gaza ground operations will throw up issues such as the retrieving of hostages, potential violations of international law by Israel, mounting civilian casualties and erosion of international support, possible regional flare-up, and identifying who to pass the baton to when the operations are complete. If operations prolong and civilian casualties mount, it will be an even bigger human disaster and potentially kill Palestinian statehood unless the Kala Chakra brings about something more tangible than false promises. India has always stood for a two-state solution, but has rightly been wary of the fallout of terror acts in Israel on its neighborhood. India is in sync with the Arab world in its normalization with Israel, with groupings such as the I2U2, India, Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States. Going forward, it is important for India to come out not just against terrorism, but also more forcefully against the human tragedy playing out in Gaza. The next article is Lost Voice. India should have made efforts for a consensus on the Gaza vote at the UN. In this article, the writer says that India's decision to abstain from the UN General Assembly 1GA vote for a ceasefire in the Israel-Palestine conflict is a protest against the omission of any explicit condemnation of the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas militants on Israel. India's principled stand on terrorism cannot be questioned, but the rising death toll and the need for global solidarity are imperative. New Delhi, with its traditionally balanced position on the issue and recent G20 role in bridging global divides, would have been well suited to play. The resolution at the emergency special session included a paragraph condemning all acts of violence aimed at Palestinian and Israeli civilians, including acts of terrorism and indiscriminate attacks. India could have played a prominent diplomatic role with countries proposing the resolution to ensure clearer mention of the October 7th attacks, including during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent conversation with Jordan's King Abdullah bin Ali Hussein about the conflict. India's abstention indicates a shift in the Modi government's stand, seeking a safe position rather than taking a stand on the violence in Israel and Palestine. This is a departure from India's Jungian vote in 2018 that called for Israel to cease excessive force in retaliatory strikes on Gaza. Abstaining on a matter of global importance without making efforts to forge a consensus is out of sync with the desire to be the voice of the global south or for a seat at the global high table. The next article is from the Hindu Business Line. The article is Green Citizen Credits Can Make a Difference. In this article, the writer says that India has publicly and comprehensively opposed the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, and has implemented two schemes designed for climate action: the Carbon Credit Trading Scheme, CCTS, and the Green Credit Program, GCP. The CCTS requires industry from specific sectors to reduce emissions, while the GCP encourages common citizens to create carbon sinks and be partners in climate action. India's biggest strength lies in onboarding small climate actions in everyday life by ordinary people. If implemented scientifically, consistently, and transparently, the GCP can be a game changer, offering a spectacular template to hand over the Climate Action Agency to the common woman. However, there have been a few nanoscale environmental action programs implemented elsewhere in the world. The West is habituated to institutionalized excessive energy consumption in daily life, with per capita consumption far exceeding global averages. It is searching for solutions that will allow ever greater energy consumption. Each solution, such as solar, wind, nuclear, hydro, and EVs, is fraught with intractable negative externalities, such as cost, end-of-life waste, or critical minerals consumption. The GCP lists a range of sectors including tree planting, water management and conservation, waste management, sustainable agriculture, and air pollution reduction. Green credits will be given to even individual-level actions in these sectors and create much-needed green offsets. Scientifically rigorous assessment of what constitutes a single credit will be a challenge, especially given the overlapping outcomes of actions. To be successful, The GCP will have to be a massive exercise, reaching out and convincing the entire Indian population to participate. A strong IT backbone is now a sine qua non of any measure designed for mass operation. A robust system can be achieved rapidly once it is put in place. India has proven its capabilities in operating at scale and speed on the last mile. India's digital public infrastructure offers a solid foundation which can be used to link environmental actions to a citizen.